Welcome to the deep dive. Here's a thought to kick us off. What if power, like even in leaders mean well, always leads to corruption? Not because they're, bad people, but because the power itself just fundamentally changes how they see reality. It's kind of a wild idea, right?
It absolutely is. And that's pretty much what this deep dive is all about. Exploring exactly that, how power can distort judgment, perception,
Okay.
and crucially, what can actually be done about it. We're looking at power less as a moral issue and more like a cognitive hazard.
A cognitive hazard. I like that framing. It shifts things. So for this deep dive, our main source is this really great article, Why Power Corrupts and How to Fix It.
Right, from the YouTube channel Therapy for Thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And it pulls from history, psychology, neuroscience. Even Machiavelli gets a look in.
He always does, doesn't he?
Seems like it. So our mission today is basically to unpack these predictable traps that power sets psychologically and structurally, and then look at some real solutions, maybe even surprising ones.
Yeah, and what's really striking about the article's main point is that it argues power doesn't just make people greedy or, evil.
Right.
It's more systematic. It actually distorts how a leader perceives reality. It can apparently even rewire their brain.
Rewire their brain, wow.
Yeah, and insulate them from feedback that might correct their course. You often see leaders start out, competent, idealistic even, but then they fall into these psychological patterns, these traps that just disconnect them from what's actually going on.
Okay, so if it's not just about being bad, what is it? Is it actually brain chemistry changing, or is it more behavioral shifts? The source mentions 3 big psychological traps.
That's right. 3 major ones. The first is this idea of self-deception that comes from success.
Self-deception. How does that work?
Well, leaders start to believe their early wins are purely down to their own genius. They massively overestimate their control over events.
The illusion of control. I think Daniel Kahneman wrote about that.
Exactly that. They start to feel, untouchable, like their intuition is infallible.
And you definitely see that historically. Like Emperor Nero. Started okay, apparently.
Right, seen as enlightened initially.
But then descended into total egomania, believing burning Rome was justified, seeing any disagreement as treason against his, divine genius.
It's a stark example. Or think about someone like Howard Hughes. That spiral into extreme paranoia.
Oh, yeah.
Trusting his delusions completely over reality, dragging his whole company down with him. It's that disconnect again.
So is there a biological basis for this? You mentioned brain rewiring.
Well, yeah, and this is where the neuroscience angle gets really compelling. Studies actually show that power can reduce neural activity.
Reduce it where?
Specifically in brain areas linked to empathy and social cognition, basically understanding others.
So it physically makes it harder for them to relate or see other perspectives?
That seems to be the implication. It's not just they don't want to see it. It might be that their capacity to perceive it is literally diminished. Imagine how that changes things. Understanding suffering, dissent.
That's actually quite chilling. Okay, so self-deception is trap 1. What happens when these leaders need advice? That leads to the next trap, right? The advisor trap.
Yep, the advisor trap, or you could call it feedback erosion. It's a classic. Leaders, often unconsciously, start picking advisors who just validate them.
The yes men.
Exactly. People who won't challenge them, and boom, you've got an echo chamber.
Right. Machiavelli was onto this centuries ago, wasn't he? Something about judging a ruler by the people around him.
Spot on. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Still holds true.
It's kind of like our social media feeds, The algorithm shows you what you like, and soon enough, that's all you see.
That's a perfect modern analogy, but imagine that echo chamber isn't deciding movie recommendations. It's shaping decisions about, national policy or massive corporate strategy.
Yeah, the stakes are way higher. Was there an example of this in the source? Like a company?
They mention Enron. The executives there apparently genuinely believed their highly fraudulent accounting was actually visionary.
Visionary, seriously.
Yeah, because they were surrounded by constant praise and internal justifications. It just spiraled into groupthink, where advisors weren't challenging, they were competing to agree harder.
Wow. Okay, self-deception, echo chambers. What's the third trap?
The third one is maybe the most insidious: moral licensing and ethical fading.
Moral licensing.
Yeah.
Meaning what exactly?
It means leaders start rationalizing unethical actions because they see themselves as fundamentally good people. I've done so much good, I've earned the right to bend the rules a little here.
I see. So past good deeds give them a license for present bad ones.
Pretty much. And that leads to what they call ethical fading, where keeping up the appearance of being virtuous becomes more important than actually being ethical.
And the danger there is.
The danger is that anyone who imposes them isn't just wrong anymore. They become framed as evil because they're threatening this carefully constructed moral self-image.
The Lance Armstrong example fits here, doesn't it?
Perfectly. He didn't just lie about doping, he actively destroyed people's lives and reputations.
Yeah.
All to protect this incredibly powerful public image he'd built as a cancer survivor, a role model, a symbol of virtue. The image became everything.
So these are the psychological traps. But it's not just in their heads, right? The structure of power itself plays a role?
Absolutely. Beyond the individual psychology, power creates these structural dynamics that reinforce the problems. Isolation is a big one.
How so?
Power inherently isolates leaders. They have less exposure to the ground level, less exposure to failure even, because things get filtered, and definitely less exposure to dissent.
So that confidence they started with, it can curdle into recklessness over time.
Exactly, because failures don't register as failures. They get reframed. It was external factors, sabotage, bad luck, never their judgment.
Sounds like, well, like truth just becomes optional at that point.
That's a good way to put it. When everyone around you, advisors, maybe even the media you consume is structured to please you, how do you tell genuine praise from flattery?
You probably can't.
Right. And that's how you get what the article calls delusion at scale. It's not just one person being wrong, it's the whole system enabling it.
And in the really extreme cases, this leads to paranoia.
Paranoia seems to be the final stage for some. The source mentions hostile attribution bias.
Oh, me.
Meaning you start seeing threats everywhere. All criticism, any setback gets interpreted as a deliberate attack or sabotage.
Like Stalin, didn't he start out idealistic?
Yeah, supposedly an idealistic revolutionary. But he ended his life seeing conspiracies and enemies absolutely everywhere, even among his closest allies for decades.
And you can see how modern life could make this even worse.
Oh, definitely. Social media, curated news feeds. Leaders can now literally build their own information ecosystems that just reflect back exactly what they want to believe. It amplifies those echo chambers massively.
Okay, this is, well, it's a pretty bleak picture of power. Self-deception, echo chambers, paranoia. But the article doesn't just leave it there, does it? It offers solutions.
Thankfully, no, it's not all doom and gloom. It moves firmly into solutions, looking at how to design against these corrosive effects.
Okay, good. What kind of things work? Are there historical examples?
Yeah, some really clever ones. Think about Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. He formed what's called his team of rivals.
Team of rivals.
Yeah.
Meaning he appointed his opponents.
Deliberately.
Yeah.
He brought his main political rivals right into his cabinet. Why? To guarantee he heard dissenting views? To keep intellectual diversity alive? To avoid groupthink?
That takes some serious confidence in yourself, doesn't it?
It really does. Or look at Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR. He used something called competitive chaos.
Competitive chaos. Sounds messy.
It probably was. He deliberately created overlapping roles and responsibilities among his advisors.
To make them argue.
Basically, yeah. To ensure that disagreement and different perspectives would naturally bubble up to him, not get smoothed over by subordinates trying to present a united front.
Interesting. So forcing dissent into the system. What about modern examples? Are companies trying this stuff?
Some are. The article mentions Ray Dalio's hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates. They're famous for their principle of radical transparency.
Radical transparency. What does that mean in practice?
It means pretty much anyone can challenge anyone else's thinking, openly, regardless of their position in the hierarchy. It's embedded in their culture. Meetings are recorded. Critiques are logged.
Wow, that's intense. Are there other tools?
Sure. Things like formal red team exercises, where you literally task a team with finding flaws in your plan or setting up anonymous feedback channels.
Right. Ways to build criticism into the process itself?
Exactly. Institutionalizing dissent, trying to systematically detect blind spots before they become disasters.
But there must be a catch, right? These systems aren't foolproof.
There's a huge catch. The article stresses this. None of these mechanisms work, none of them, unless the leader at the very top actively, visibly rewards honesty and punishes flattery.
So the culture has to support it.
Absolutely. If people get slapped down for speaking truth to power, even with these systems in place, they'll just become performative. Window dressing, the cycle continues.
So boiling it all down, this final insight from the article really lands.
Yeah.
The idea of power as a cognitive hazard.
Yeah, I like that too.
It's like piloting a plane.
Yeah.
You don't avoid flying because it's risky.
Right.
You surround it with rigorous training, checklists, oversight, air traffic control, all these mechanisms to manage the inherent risks.
Precisely. Power isn't inherently evil, but it's inherently hazardous to cognition, to perception, to ethics. So it needs similar safeguards.
Which requires constant effort, doesn't it? It's not a one-time fix.
No, ongoing vigilance. Things like consciously encouraging intellectual humility in leaders, rewarding curiosity, making dissent safe and expected, designing systems specifically to break echo chambers.
And it's not just on the leader, is it?
Not at all. The article suggests it's a shared responsibility. Citizens, advisors, journalists, board members. We all have a role in helping keep leaders grounded, connected to reality.
Okay, so let's recap the core idea then. Power's ability to distort isn't just about individual character flaws.
Right. It's more systemic, it's psychological, and it demands structural fixes, not just hoping we pick good people.
Understanding these traps isn't about condemning leaders. It's more about recognizing the risks inherent in power itself.
Exactly. And then building institutions, fostering environments that are resilient to corruption by design, not just by chance or virtue.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on.
Yeah, how might really internalizing this idea of power as a cognitive hazard change how you look at leadership?
Or how you might design an organization, maybe, or even just how you interact with authority figures in your own life.
It prompts you to look beyond the person and scrutinize the system, the structures, the pressures, and that feels like a really important shift in perspective.